Okay, so we're constantly drowning in headlines about huge cyber attacks, data breaches, you name it. But have you ever stopped and wondered why? Why, after all this time and all this technology, do they still keep succeeding? Well, today we're going to get past the headlines and dig into the real reason these attacks actually work.
I mean, this is the big question, isn't it? With all the money and all the brain power we throw at security, how do the bad guys keep winning? The answer might not be what you think. It's often less about some evil genius attacker and way more about an open door that we left for them.
And that's the absolute key to this whole thing. For any attack to work, you don't just need a bad guy. You need an opening, a gap, a weak spot in the defenses. In the world of cybersecurity, we call that a vulnerability. So for this explainer, we're going to flip the script. We're going to stop staring at the attacker out there and start looking inward at the weaknesses that let them in.
This brings us to a really core idea. And honestly, if you can get your head around the difference between a threat and a vulnerability, it will completely change how you think about staying safe online. It is a fundamental concept. So let's just define it, nice and simple. A vulnerability is just a weakness. That's it. It's a flaw, a gap, a mistake. It's not the attack itself. It's the reason an attack can happen in the first place. Think of it like a little chink in the armor. Let's break it down side by side. The threat is the stuff that's out there. The hacker, the virus, that sketchy-looking email. It's the what that could cause harm. The vulnerability, on the other hand, is the stuff that's in here. Our outdated software, our weak passwords, our employees who haven't been trained. It's the why the threat actually works. And here's the thing, we can't always control the threats, but we are almost always in control of our vulnerability. Here's the perfect way to think about this. Rain is the threat. You can't stop it from raining, right? That's external. But a hole in your roof, that's the vulnerability. That's internal, something you can fix. And if you don't, you get water damage. That's the impact. See? If there's no hole in your roof, the rain isn't a problem. So let's apply this to our digital world. A phishing email arrives in your inbox. That's the threat. But an employee who clicks on it because they can't spot a scam, that's the vulnerability. A hacker trying to break into a network is the threat, sure. But the unpatched server with a known flaw is the vulnerability that gives them an open door. A thief is a threat, but the unlocked server room door is the actual problem you can and should fix.
All right, so we get what a vulnerability is, but where do they come from? It's so easy to just think it's all about bugs in the software, but the reality is way, way bigger than that. These weaknesses tend to show up in four main areas.
These things pop up everywhere. You've got human vulnerabilities, like someone falling for a scam. There are process ones, which are basically just gaps in the rules, like a company that never gets around to disabling old accounts for people who've left. Then, of course, there's the technical stuff we all know about, outdated software being a big one. And finally, you can't forget physical vulnerabilities. I mean, if somebody can just walk in and grab a server, your fancy firewalls don't mean a thing.
Now, here is a little bit of good news. A single weakness is almost never enough to cause a complete disaster. That's because our defenses are, or should be, built in layers. A real catastrophe usually only happens when the holes in those different layers align just right, giving an attacker a clear path straight through. This is perfectly explained by what's called the Swiss cheese model. So just imagine each layer of your defense is a slice of Swiss cheese, and the holes are the vulnerabilities. So a threat comes along. A phishing email. An employee clicks it, boom, the threat just passed through the first hole in the human slice. Next, there should be a rule preventing that download, but there isn't. Whoops, now it's through the hole in the process slice. And finally, the antivirus software should have caught it, but it was out of date. The hole in the technical slice. And just like that, the threat sailed through three perfectly aligned holes. And now, you've got a breach.
Okay, so you might be thinking, great, I've got all these potential holes everywhere. What am I supposed to do? We can't fix everything at once. So how do we decide what to tackle first? This is where we need to talk about risk. Thinking in terms of risk helps us turn that huge, confusing list of problems into a clear, prioritized plan.
So what is risk, really? It's not just that a weakness exists. Risk is a combination of two key things: the chance that a threat will actually use that weakness, and how bad the damage will be if it does. At the end of the day, it's all about the potential for harm.
You can think of risk as having two main levers: likelihood and impact. Likelihood is just how probable is it? Receiving a phishing email is a high likelihood event. It happens all the time. Impact is, if it does happen, how bad is it going to be? A hacker messing with your website's font is low impact. A hacker deleting your entire customer database? That is a catastrophically high impact.
Professionals use a simple but really powerful tool called a risk matrix to see this clearly. You just plot likelihood against impact, and the area you really have to worry about is that top right corner, the red zone, high likelihood and high impact. That's what we call critical risk, and that's what you fix right now. An issue that's low likelihood and low impact, you can probably deal with that later. This is how you prioritize.
All right, that's enough theory. Let's make this super practical. How can you take this way of thinking, this risk mindset, and use it to make smarter, safer decisions in your own life starting today?
Come on, does this sound familiar? I think we've all been there. It feels so much more convenient and maybe even harmless. But let's actually apply our risk framework and see what's really going on.
Okay, the vulnerability is obviously reusing that same password everywhere. So what's the likelihood that a threat exploits this? Well, it's high, because all those little random websites you sign up for get breached constantly. And what's the impact if they get that one password? It's critical, because now they can try it on your email, your social media, your bank, everything. So you've created a high likelihood, critical impact event, all for a little convenience.
Here's another super common one, especially for students. It feels helpful, right? You're just trying to collaborate and get the project done. But again, let's look at the risk. And remember, the threat doesn't have to be some evil hacker. The asset here is your entire academic record. The vulnerability is that you've just skipped right past the login system that's meant to protect it. And the threat? It might not be a bad guy at all. It could just be human error. Your friend could accidentally delete the wrong file or submit the wrong version. And the impact? It could be an academic penalty, maybe even a failed class. That's a high impact, and it all came from a simple mistake.
And this just scales up dramatically in a workplace. An action that seems like a tiny risk to you, like ignoring a software update on your machine, can become a gigantic risk for the entire company. In a connected network, your computer could be the one domino that falls and brings the whole system down with it. It's a massive multiplier effect.
So how can you practice this mindset every day? It really comes down to 3 simple questions. Before you click, before you share, before you connect, just ask yourself, 1, what is valuable here? That's the asset. 2, what's weak or unprotected? That's the vulnerability. And 3, the most important one, if this goes wrong, can I live with the result? That's the impact. And really, that's what this is all about. The goal isn't to be paranoid, it's just to be aware. So I'll leave you with this final thought. Now that you know how to spot vulnerabilities, what's the one hole in your roof that you can go and patch right now? Thanks for joining me on this explainer.